How do you see it being invoked? How could it
Well,
happen?
and by the way, Brian, you've spoken on this issue for a while, and I
Yeah,
appreciate that. It's the only viable option. Even if the Democrats take back the House and or the Senate in 26,
yeah.
I don't think they'll go. I don't think they'll ever go down the impeachment conviction route. So even though it's extremely difficult, the 25th Amendment is the only option, and it's going to take because he does get more dangerous by the day. And I'm
Yes.
not saying this is going to happen, Brian, but it's going to take someone courageous in that cabinet, someone courageous working with them, who's willing to fall on his sword and say this if it really gets to the point where he's making decisions that threaten people's lives and threaten the country,
I think he's already done that. But
which he's
who do
already done.
who do you think it would be if you were out of the members of the cabinet? Who would you think would stand up? You know them. You know most of them.
That's such a great question. That's such a great question. There was a time, Brian, I always wanted to believe that Marco Rubio still had some
Yeah.
normality to him, some sanity to him. I don't think so. The whole Susie Wiles thing this past week was kind of like a first shot over the bow, and no cabinet member bit at it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but there is no other option.
You know what it's interesting you bring up Susie Wiles, because I thought that article in Vanity Fair, she said, I will push back against the president, but at the end of the day, he makes the decisions and I implement them. So what that tells me is that there's no 25th Amendment option without Susie being involved in it somehow.
I agree with that. Susie Wiles would have to be involved in it somehow. And I think congressional, again, it's at that point, but if it really gets to the point, I think congressional, probably senatorial Republicans will put humongous pressure on the cabinet to do something. I don't think it will come from inside the cabinet. I think it would come from a group of Senate Republicans who would demand.
Now that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
You think it would come from without, not from within?
it would have to come from without. They would knock on the cabinet's door and they'd say, we're well past the fucking point. Either you do something or we're going to demand you do something and we're going to go public on a bunch of stuff. I think that's the only way it happens. I don't see anybody, because any member of the cabinet who stood up and said, we got to do this, they're gone the next day.
Yeah, well, anybody who would stand up and say it publicly would probably be gone the next day. But to that point, I've talked to sources who say it's a murmur. It's like a brief, remember, 25th Amendment runaway, but it's not like it's not on their mind. You know that end of the aisle better than most. You think it's being discussed in those channels?
I have no doubt. Look, I think I can't stand Marjorie Taylor Greene. Can't trust her as far as I could throw my cup of coffee. But she's right in one thing, and that's still a lot of Republicans privately understand right now that Trump's a danger to the party and a danger to the country.
Took them long enough to get there.
Took them long enough to get there.
Yeah.
But I think the pressure would come from a group in the Senate who just don't give a damn anymore.
And who would that be?
That's a great question. That's a great question. What if he went to war against Venezuela? What if the madman declared war against Venezuela? You'll see Rand Paul. You'll see a number of Senate Republicans stand up against that.
Thomas Massey and
in
Rand
the House.
Paul.
Yeah. It would come from that. It's and Brian, because you know the inner workings of that place. In a weird way, he's like almost not even doing his job and falling asleep every day.
Right.
Stephen Miller's like running shit. Russ Vaught, these guys are all out doing their things, and Trump just sits slumped over on at the Oval Office.
While Susie Wiles directs traffic. Yeah, that's frightening in and of itself. But here we are. They left. I don't know that Congress. I don't know that the House, maybe the Senate, But I certainly don't see the House moving in any type of direction like that because, look, they left without, talking about health care. They're going to come back from the holidays, and one of the very first things they're going to have to pick up again is another government stoppage. They have to take a look at that, before anything else.